Their first fight was taken on fairly short notice when Jon Jones fell out of the main event and was stripped of the belt. We saw Rumble land a heavy punch that sent DC flying across the cage, but his overzealous style cost him dearly as he went for the finish and he gave up position. DC was essentially able to out-wrestle Rumble as he gave up his back and he tapped out. But that's Rumble though, he just snaps, whether it's him throwing a yoga mat, a post-fight celebration, or he's in a heated exchange on the feet. It seems to me Rumble loses control, and therefore he lacks his technique. If you listen to Rumble's corner, Henry Hooft is constantly yelling for him to relax. Then we have the whole Black Zillion camp falling apart, which could be a major factor. I'm assuming he's still working with Hooft, and most importantly Neil Melanson, his wrestling and grappling coach. According to his Instagram, he promoted Neil's technique DVD, so I think he's still working with him. Still, the concern for picking Rumble isn't his wrestling or lack of technique, but most importantly his composure. Not to say he always loses it, because he doesn't, but when the stakes are high and there's a moment of opportunity, it only takes one slip up for DC to capitalize on. In the first fight, it's fair to say Rumble definitely got the better of DC in the stand-up. At range or in close, Rumble's offensive pressure was a lot to handle. But other than the one knockdown, DC did well managing it. If Rumble overextended, DC would capitalize by getting an angle and taking him down, or if Rumble was repetitive with his strikes, DC would find that opening to take Rumble down. From there, DC's top game compared to Rumble's bottom game was the major difference, and as the fight wore on, Rumble's corner began shouting at him to man up and not to give up. Obviously, DC's grinding style and conditioning was just too much as Rumble gave up his back and did little to defend a rear naked choke. If we see Rumble more composed, making good choices with his shot selection, and keeping aware of his range, then his likelihood is much higher compared to the last fight. Composure will help him to keep a steady rhythm, which in turn helps his conditioning and keeping good technique. A varied shot selection will make it more difficult for DC to make reads and find openings to close the distance. That leads to Rumble's awareness of range, so he can find moments in the pocket with uppercuts and hooks, or at mid-range with overhands and kicks. However, if the fight sees the third round, it's hard not to begin seriously favoring DC to win. Even if he's exhausted, he's durable and he can work for and secure takedowns. On the feet, DC could maybe take advantage of a more exhausted Rumble and win exchanges or press him against the fence and dirty box. Personally, I wonder how much sparring and training DC has been able to do with Cain Velasquez, because although they don't quite have the same style, they have similarities, and as we know, Cain is injured. Plus, he went 5 hard rounds with Alexander Gustafsson, and then the 3 with Anderson Silva. He's now 38 years old and has had to pull out of a couple fights because of injuries. So I begin to question when the turning point will be, but for now, I still see DC as a favorable pick in this fight. The odds show these two at even money at this point in time, and that's understandable. On one hand, I'd love to see Rumble get the victory here, because then there's a much higher chance we'd see Jon Jones fight him, assuming he even makes it back to the octagon. Jon Jones versus Rumble is a fight that really needs to happen in my opinion. In that case, there'd be an opportunity for Daniel Cormier to move to heavyweight while Cain is out and maybe fight for a belt there. I favor DC in a lot of fights at heavyweight. He definitely could be a 2-division champ. On the other hand, if DC wins, I would be very interested in seeing how Jones looks after the long layoff, fighting him in a rematch. Similar to DC, I think Rumble would also benefit from dipping his toes in the UFC heavyweight division. Imagine a fight with Francis Ngannou and Anthony Rumble Johnson. Nonetheless, DC and Rumble, they're going at it again, and I see an argument for either side. For myself, I'm leaning DC. I think Rumble will look significantly more prepared in this fight, and he can obviously win it by knockout like he almost did in the first fight, but you have to remember that DC will also be more prepared for Rumble style and will likely have more tools to mitigate his aggression. I wouldn't be surprised if this fight goes to the championship rounds or the judges' scorecards in the rematch, and if that's the case, I think DC will have the stronger and more dominant performance in the 4th and 5th rounds. But don't forget to tell me what you think will happen in this fight down below. I'm interested in hearing your takeaway from their first fight and what you will think will happen in the rematch. I'm a fan of both guys, so my heart is divided, but I like the styles matchup, so it's a win-win. If you'd be so kind, like and subscribe, and if you're on Twitter, follow me, and I'll follow you back. Thanks for watching.